You were in the middle of being right, not upset, not sad, angry, completely, justifiably angry, and your eyes filled with tears. And in that moment, you did not just lose the argument. You lost the version of yourself you were trying to be. If that has happened to you, there is something you need to hear. Because what that moment actually means is the opposite of what you have always assumed. And by the time this ends, something you have quietly believed about yourself for years is going to look completely different. But first, a question nobody asks. Why does the body cry during anger at all? What is the connection? Because on the surface, they seem like opposites. Anger is hot. It moves forward. It wants to fight. Tears are soft. They collapse inward. They want comfort. These two things should not be happening in the same body at the same moment. And yet, they do. Consistently, in millions of people, in moments of real, legitimate anger. That is not a coincidence. That is a pattern. And patterns always mean something. Here is what it means. Anger is almost never the first emotion. It feels like the first emotion. It arrives fast, loud, filling all the available space. But underneath it, arriving slightly earlier, in a fraction of a second that the conscious mind cannot catch, is something else. Something quieter. Something that felt too exposed to stay on the surface. Psychologists call anger a secondary emotion, which is a clinical way of saying this. Anger is a bodyguard. It shows up to protect something more vulnerable that came before it. And what is it protecting? Usually one of three things: hurt, fear, or the specific, quiet devastation of feeling like you do not matter enough to someone who matters too much to you. These are the primary emotions, the real ones, the ones the tears belong to. And when you cry during anger, what is happening is not confusion. It is not weakness. It is not weakness. Your body is simply responding to both layers simultaneously, the armor on top and the wound underneath it, at exactly the same time. That is what the tears are. They are not interrupting the anger. They are proving that the anger is real because something real caused it. But here is the question that actually matters. Why does this happen to some people and not others? Because not everyone experiences this. Some people become angry without a single tear. Clean, simple, contained. So what is different? Go back with me. Not far. Just to the first place you learned what to do with a strong feeling. Some people grew up in homes where anger was dangerous, not necessarily violent, sometimes just unpredictable. The kind of home where one person's mood could change the entire atmosphere, where conflict felt like it could break something permanent. A child in that environment learns one lesson very early. Anger is a threat. Your anger, specifically, is something that needs to disappear. But the anger does not disappear. It cannot. It is biological. It is built in. It does not vanish because a child decides it should. It gets rerouted. And one of the most common exits it finds is through tears. Other people grew up being told their feelings were too much, too sensitive, too intense. Stop overreacting. You are so dramatic. Calm down. This is a different wound, but it creates the same result. Because anger, to function properly, needs one thing. It needs the person feeling it to believe that what they feel is valid, that they are worth being heard. Without that belief, anger cannot hold its shape. It arrives and immediately loses its footing, and the tears are what comes rushing in to fill the space it could not hold. These patterns were built over years. They are not character flaws. They are survival adaptations. The nervous system learned from what it was given. It is still running those programs right now, in the body of an adult, in moments that have nothing to do with childhood, because the nervous system does not check whether the old rules still apply. It just runs them. Now, here is where it gets specific. Here is why this particular experience, out of all emotional experiences, carries that unique, particular flavor of humiliation. In the moment of angry tears, you are not dealing with one problem. You are dealing with three at the same time. The original wound, the anger covering it, and now the shame about the tears. And the shame has a very specific source. We live inside a cultural story that decided a long time ago that tears during conflict mean you have lost, that the person who stays dry-eyed is the one worth listening to, that emotion is a liability in any situation that requires being taken seriously. Most people absorb this story before they were old enough to question it, before they had the tools to ask, says who? Based on what, where did this idea come from, and is it actually true? It is not true. But it feels true, and the feeling is what does the damage, because now, in the middle of a moment, that already requires everything you have. A second battle starts. The battle against yourself, against the tears, against the reaction. And you are fighting the situation and fighting your own body at the same time. That is not weakness. That is an impossible amount of weight to carry in a single moment, and most people carry it completely alone. Here is what no one ever tells you about the biology. When you cry, your body is running a highly precise chemical process. Tears actually carry stress hormones out of the body, measurable biochemical compounds that build up under emotional pressure are physically released through crying. The parasympathetic nervous system, the part responsible for calm and de-recovery, activates during crying. Heart rate slows. Muscle tension releases. The entire system begins to return to baseline. Your body never learned to be embarrassed about this. It does not experience crying as failure. It experiences it as maintenance, as the most efficient tool it has for returning to balance. The embarrassment is not biological. It was taught by a culture that was wrong about what tears mean. But now I need to tell you something about why this moment feels the way it does. Because there is one more layer, and this is the one that once you see it, you cannot unsee it. When you are angry, you need one specific thing from the world around you. You need to be taken seriously. Anger is a boundary emotion. At its core, it is the feeling that says, "This matters, and I will not allow it to be dismissed." It needs you to feel like someone with standing, someone whose words have weight. But underneath that anger, in the same moment, the hurt that triggered all of it needs something completely different. It needs to be received, held, met with softness instead of resistance. It needs the opposite of confrontation. It needs someone to stop defending themselves for long enough to actually see you. You cannot get both of those things at the same time. Not in that moment, not from that situation. The circumstances are calling for one, and the deepest part of you is desperately needing the other. And the tears are the body expressing that collision, that impossible, painful space between needing to fight and needing to be held, that specific feeling, that specific impossibility. That is what no one ever names. And the reason it has felt so confusing for so long is that no one gave you the language for it. You experienced it as chaos, as your emotions misfiring, as evidence that something in you was broken or excessive or hard to deal with. It was none of thoughts, things. It was one of the most human experiences that exists, and you have been misreading it your entire life. Now, what do you actually do with this? Not a list, not steps, just one thing, because it is the only thing that actually works. The next time the tears come during anger, do not fight them. Do not add shame on top of what is already there. For just 1 second, before you do anything else, acknowledge both things. The anger is real, and the thing underneath the anger is also real. You do not have to say it out loud. You do not have to explain it to anyone. Just know it inside yourself, in the middle of the moment. That single act, that refusal to turn against yourself while you are already under pressure, changes the entire experience, not because it stops the tears, but because it removes the war. And the war was always harder than the emotion itself. The people who cry when they are angry are not people who feel too much. They are people who feel completely, who carry the full weight of a moment without editing it down into something more manageable, more acceptable, more comfortable for the people around them. That is not a flaw in you. That has always been one of the most honest things about you. If this names something you have carried for a long time without quite being able to say it, there is more here. Subscribe only if it felt worth it. No pressure. But if it did, there is a lot more where this came from.